This episode really marks a change in the Cultists because we're moving away from the episodic nature of basically episodes 1 to 5, and we're starting our Yellow King arc. By this time, all of the characters have been introduced. People know who everybody is in the show, and now we are starting to have the cult deal with the influences of the Yellow King. And this was a big deal because it starts a multi-episode arc. And I think the show was absolutely better for it. Most people who worked on the show think that this, episode 6, is the best episode of the season. And in fact, when we were thinking about taking this to different festivals or whatever, if we were going to submit one episode, it was going to be episode 6. Brennan, the director of photography, particularly lobbied for that. Now, ultimately, we decided not to go that route. But ironically, a lot of people liked episode 6 as the best standalone episode from both the story and technical perspective, even though it's the one that kicks off the entire Yellow King arc. This episode also has one of the biggest Easter eggs of the season, which could definitely go unnoticed, and it's a reference to the first season of the True Detective series. I love True Detective Season 1. The Yellow King features in it. It's very Lovecraftian. We wanted to tie the Cultists to True Detective and the Yellow King. So what we did was we grabbed a screenshot of the very few seconds where you actually see this flyer in True Detective Season 1, which is implied to be part of the cult of the Yellow King on this yellow piece of paper. It says, Jesus Christ will save you, etc. And then what we did was we replicated that flyer for our prop to hang on the electrical box. Our director, Brianna, is a graphic artist, so she helped to try to replicate exactly this look here. We've got the Jesus down here from Brazil and the symbol behind him. We were able to put that in as close as possible, replicate the font, all of the text. We even did the handwritten information down there at the bottom. Now, what we did is we changed the handwritten information to be an address that was local to us. So that was supposed to be actually where the Yellow King's cult was actually meeting. I wish this was able to get more screen time because we did pay a lot of attention to getting this prop right. Now, this was supposed to connect to an earlier version of the final scene of this show. Some people may know that in episode 10, according to the original scripts, we were going to have a cultist of the Yellow King looking through the window of Mike's house onto his dinner that he's having with his family, implying that the cult of the Yellow King is actually out there and that they are a danger. Now, of course, ultimately, we didn't go that route. We decided to never actually physically indicate the presence of the cult of the Yellow King, therefore leaving open and even implying the idea that all of our cultists are just delusional and this enemy is not something that's actually out there. We decided not to concretize it. But if we had made that concrete, that the Yellow King was out there in the final seconds of Season 1, what would have happened here is that this would have actually been the clue to the Yellow King's cult. I mean, here it is, right there on screen with their address, exactly where they're meeting. And Ben correctly identifies it. He goes, oh, look, right there. There's the yellow sign. It's sitting right there behind you. And every other character, Mike and Rob, are immediately dismissive of it. Mike tears it down off of the electrical box and immediately dismisses Ben's input that, oh, look, there it is. But if the show had actually gone in the direction that there is the Yellow King, the idea and the humor of this was that Ben would have correctly identified the Yellow King immediately right there behind them, and every other person was dismissive of it. So that was our idea, and this still remains my favorite Easter egg in the Cultist show. While I've been yakking about the flyer of the Yellow King, you may have noticed that this is also a major cameo episode. Kimbrel, one of our production assistants, can be seen as the lady with the yellow ribbon on the bridge, and then I also make a cameo in this episode with the guy in the yellow hat who steps out from behind the tree. Yes, very sketch. Then also the tennis player is Brennan Martinoni, who is the director of photography for the season, and that's actually the only scene in the season that he didn't shoot. Dax Rocker, who plays Rob, was actually behind the camera shooting that while Brennan played our tennis player. At the time, he was dating Megan, our head of costuming, but since then they've gotten married. The inclusion of the yellow bench here was something that was written into the script while we were doing a technical scout of this location. I was at the park with Brianna, our director, and Brennan, our director of photography. And when we saw the yellow bench, we were like, oh my God, that's where our characters would think that the cult of the Yellow King was meeting. Oh my God, where's the cult of the Yellow King meet? At a yellow bench, obviously. Okay, so that got written in because we saw the bench. And that was explicitly intended to contrast with the idea that there was the handwritten address on that flyer where they're actually meeting, whereas our characters get fixated on this bench. And then we have this Scooby-Doo-like scene where the characters are, coming out from behind this tree and investigating, which a lot of this was actually ad-libbed. We let Dax and Glenn kind of just explore their characters around this bench, trying to be inconspicuous. Of course, they're being anything but as they're trying to, stake out this bench. When Glenn, who's playing Ben, comes up and whacks this bench with this stick, Dax, who's playing Rob, doesn't know he's going to do that. You can see that Rob, or that Dax almost loses it right there, but Brennan pans away from Dax in order to focus on Glenn walking away. Then, of course, we have Dave, played by Leon Skye, come up with the infamous yellow shirt on, and that starts all of the suspicion right there. Now, what you're seeing here is an after-credit scene on the show. This wasn't scripted. We had to tie up Leon Skye to this tree, and so since we had to do that anyway, we decided to go ahead and shoot that and let the actors go ahead and ad-lib what they thought might have happened while Dave was actually being tied to the tree. So you get that right here. This is an entirely ad-lib scene, and it goes into the difference between Father Dagon or Father Dagon, the pronunciation of that. We talked about that on set, how that name should be said for different reasons, and so that discussion got represented on screen through this after-credit scene that was ad-libbed.